I think the Peter Drucker Forum is the premier management conference in the world. I have come many times over the last few years, and I'm so excited to be back. There are not a lot of management conferences, and this one I think really stands head and shoulders above the rest. The people here, the community, the ideas that are being discussed are really important, and it's just a lovely group of people to get together with and get to meet and to talk to about the future of management.
You have conversations, sessions, debates, presentations, and really what you have is ideas, invisible ideas that float around and cram in and pass from person to person. And it's a very interesting, unusual mix.
It's a conference where people who come are very smart people. They're here to network for sure, but they're smart people who understand good insight and bad insight, and so you learn a lot by being here.
Good morning and welcome, everybody. It is wonderful to have this community together again. We have over 600 people, a full house here in presence, 40% from German-speaking countries, 15% from the rest of Europe, 20% from the US and the UK, almost 10% from Asia, another 3 to 5% from Africa. But we have 60 countries represented through our Drucker Forum Live, the online community that is watching us today. This year's theme, Next Era Leadership, All Hands on Deck, reflect how we all feel that the old playbook doesn't work and that we're in a transition to co-create the next management, the next leadership. But to lead differently, we have to learn differently. It requires curiosity, it requires doubt, it requires to challenge our assumptions. So our invitation is that during these 2 days, you open not only your mind, but your hearts. Because to really learn and change the way you see, you decide, and you act, you have to learn with openness and passion. And maybe most important of all, connect with each other. The forum is a community of practice. We believe in collective intelligence, and the resources we have for you these days, these 2 days, invite you to more interaction than ever. Plenaries, panels, deep dialogues, networking lunches, the gala dinner. We have a bookstore. We have a table near the bookstore where you have documents and CDs. We have the CHRO stream. New elements for you to interact. Around you are the potential partners for implementation of these ideas when you go back. Tap on the community. The future of leadership will not be invented alone. It has to be co-authored, co-created, and that's our invitation. The next era begins today. All hands on deck. Let me now invite Richard Straub on stage, the founder and president of the Global Peter Drucker Forum. We receive him with a
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly delighted and humbled to welcome you to the 17th Global Peter Drucker Forum. My heartfelt gratitude goes to all our speakers, partners, and participants for your overwhelming response, and it can be seen here in this room, to this year's theme and your commitment to engage. Thank you for being here. It is our ambition as the Drucker Forum to be a stronghold for reason and humanity, a place where ideas and dialogue serve the common good, just as Peter Drucker envisioned. Our core belief, inspired by Peter Drucker, remains unchanged. Management is not just a business function, it is a role in society. The importance of good management spans all institutions, from business and academia to the public sector, civil society, and philanthropy. And all these communities are strongly represented today in both the audience and the program. About 2/3 of our participants are business and institutional leaders, from entrepreneurs, founders, to C-level executives. And we have a very strong C-level and board presence here. And thanks to our Diamond partner, SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, we also welcome the largest group of HR leaders ever at the forum. You will have noticed that in the program, and it was mentioned, there is a people leader stream integrated into the program, and I believe it's a clear signal to show that the human dimension has become vital and essential in management, especially in this age of AI. We are also joined by a vibrant group of next-generation leaders, finalists from the Drucker Challenge Essay Contest. You will see them this evening at the gala dinner, and outstanding students from our strategic academic partner, the Vienna University of Economics and Business. Today, the organizations that shape our society are deeply interconnected, operating within a dynamic ecosystem that complement each other in the value creation and innovation process, in a world that is more complex and unpredictable than ever. I think we can say that these days with a good foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago we launched the Next Management Initiative, Next Management, a framework that guides our thinking and our work. It inspires each year's forum theme, and it drives our outreach beyond the annual event. Through Drucker salons, online sessions, partner conferences, and research projects that extend our ideas across geography and time. We always say we are more than a conference, and we want to show it. What makes the Drucker Forum distinctive is our lens, our specific lens. We explore the great issues of our time through the prism of management and leadership. Not only through the macro lens, like economics and policy primarily do. As Peter Drucker said, economists are interested in the behavior of commodities. I'm interested in the behavior of people. And we pride ourselves to focus on this, on people. Everything we do culminates here in this forum. It's our crystallizing event, where ideas, insights, partnerships come together. That is why we are so energized and excited to welcome you here in Vienna, in the Vienna Hofburg, an environment where history and culture converge. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all a stimulating and inspiring forum. May you leave with new perspective, fresh energy, new friends, and concrete ideas to approach your specific challenges differently and to shape the future with courage and ingenuity. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Richard. I would like to invite now Robert Sausgruber, the rector of the Vienna University of Economics and Business.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure being here. Thank you for your continuing support. First of all, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Richard Straub, the founder of this forum and the organizer of this forum, which has been taking place here in Vienna since 2009, already for the 17th time. With this initiative, Peter Drucker is of course honored, and Richard honors also the city of Vienna, right, which is the place where Peter Drucker has been born and he grew up. And you are, of course, aware of that all, but I would like to add a fact, that the fact that Peter Drucker Forum is taking place in Vienna is also paying tribute to the university that I'm presenting. And WU, the Vienna University of Economics and Business, has been founded over 100 years ago in 1898, and Adolf Bertram Drucker, who was the father of Peter Drucker. He has been a lawyer and a leading official of the Royal and Imperial Ministry of Trade. He was giving the Foundation Act together with the Viennese merchants to actively promote and establish a university to provide education in trade in a time of upcoming globalization. So this organization started with 30 students at that time. Today, WU has 22,000 students, and it's one of the largest universities in Europe specializing in economics, business, and business law. For us, being part of the education system, Drucker's contributions to the knowledge societies is particularly important. Equally significant are his perspectives on the management of non-profit organizations and marketing. I should mention that Peter Drucker is the recipient of the Victor Matthias Medal, which was awarded to him in 1990 by the Austrian Association of Advertising Research, again at our university. And in a way, the career of Peter Drucker is mimicking also the success of our institution, and you may actually ask how that happened. And as I see it, the most important contribution of Peter Drucker was to give us, the academics, but also the practitioners, identity. He gave us identity as a field. I'm an economist by training, and for us economists, we weren't really interested in how you manage a firm and how to run corporate behavior. And the background to this is, of course, Adam Smith and what is known today as the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics. Accordingly, we didn't care about firms because we were claiming unless there is a constraint to competition, they will do well and they will actually act in the interest of the society. Now, Peter Drucker, of course, at that time, he talked to the most important thinkers of that time, to Joseph Schumpeter, to von Mises, to Friedrich Hayek, and they all went through terrible crises, and of course he was super alert, and he understood that this economic view, this simplification, was just incomplete. So he had the capacity to really draw from these experiences and exchanges, and he was always on spot, always on time, a great visionary. So, dear Richard, thank you again for our mutual collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, I hope you will have 2 wonderful days here in Vienna of critical thinking, discussion, mutual inspiration. It is actually your experience and your knowledge that enable us as trainers in education, as universities, to train the future generation. So I will listen to you how to train our students. I know that you are the way to go. The best way to predict the future is to create it, as Peter said. So I will watch you closely, and I wish you a wonderful conference, and thank you so much for being with us in Vienna. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rupert. And now I'd like to invite Takahito Tokita, the CEO of Fujitsu Limited, to give a few words. Very welcome.
Thank you, Eduardo-san. Good morning, everyone. I'm Takahito Tokita, CEO of Fujitsu. It's a great honor for me to speak to you, and I'd like to thank Dr. Richard Stoller to give me this opportunity. Fujitsu's partnership with the Drucker Forum is very important for us, and I highly appreciate that Richard came over to our event in Tokyo this July to speak about the next management and engage with CEOs of many leading Japanese companies. I'm truly sorry that I am unable to join you in Vienna this time. So let me begin with the state of today's world. We continue to face difficult challenges and uncertainties in trade and economies, geopolitics, environment and society, as well as technologies. As Richard emphasized repeatedly, the old management models of the 20th century are no longer adequate to solve them. Now is the time to renew management models for organizations to become more innovative and create greater value for not only customers, but also society. How can we achieve this? Peter Drucker placed humanity at the core of this thinking. Management is about how we can make people collaborate more effectively while increasing their well-being. And leadership is about how we can develop a working environment where people feel safe and work more creatively with freedom. Then, how will AI come into this big picture? The cognitive capability of AI is rising beyond our imaginations already, surpassing human capabilities in some part of knowledge work. The key point of using AI must not be just to automate everything, but to augment human capabilities. AI can be a strong force to assist people and create innovations by connecting diverse talents and knowledge across organizations. Furthermore, AI can also supplement the workforce in the rapidly declining and aging population. As a technology company, Fujitsu is dynamically using AI for our own work, as well as deploying AI for many clients' organizations. One example is software development. We are extensively applying generative AI to the development of large-scale mission-critical software systems for various industries. Another example is global supply chain. We have developed a global supply chain system using AI agent technology. Multiple AI agents autonomously collaborate to instantly simulate how much impact unexpected events can have on operations and financials, and to purpose effective countermeasures. In addition, to accelerate industry-wide AI-driven transformation. Just last month, Fujitsu expanded our strategic collaboration with NVIDIA to deliver full-stack AI infrastructure, which will integrate AI agents. This involves co-development of industrial AI agent platform, next-generation computing infrastructure, and ecosystems. Although it's always difficult to predict the future, one thing I'm sure is that AI will force us to revisit ourselves, human beings. Who we are, what we can do, and what we should do. A big challenge that next era leaders must deal with will be how we can develop human capabilities and how we can make people and AI collaborate effectively to drive a better society. This concludes my short speech. I hope you will exchange great ideas in the 2 days and shape image of next era leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Takahito Tokita. What an interesting topic, and I wonder what Peter Drucker would have to say about how to blend artificial intelligence into the next leadership. Our next session is the opening salvo, the new leadership our time demands, that will be chaired by Monica Rosen, Vice President of the Austro-American Society. We welcome her with a big round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the opening salvo. It is my pleasure and my privilege to be your host for the upcoming discussion. I am Vice President of the Austro-American Society, and until my retirement, I've worked in the financial services industry all my life as head of research at Austrian's largest bank, just to give you an impression of who you're looking at. Now, the opening salvo will basically consist of 2 parts. First, we will have 3 speakers. They will give an impulse statement of 3, I repeat, 3 minutes each. They will, don't you be laughing, I mean it. Then they will all, of course, be sitting down, and then the 3 panel members will join them, and we will embark on the discussion proper. In terms of a brief introduction, and since this is a naval theme, all hands on deck, and we're discussing leadership, I thought I would give you a brief historical impulse because I find it very much apropos. We are going back to the year 1519. To a man, a Portuguese sea captain who is about to embark on a voyage from which he would not return, but which would also immortalize him. I am, of course, talking about Ferdinand Magellan. He was an outstanding leader, both in good and in bad ways, I dare say. Let's hear for just a second what a historian wrote about Magellan. With small, unmanageable ships, completely at the mercy of capricious winds, his voyage included 25,000 miles across completely unknown seas. Faced with sick and mutinous crews, with constant anxiety about food and water and the repeated ravages of scurvy, only his personal drive and determination brought his often unwilling armada to its destination. I dare say, ladies and gentlemen, he had many qualities that make an outstanding leader even today. Vision, determination, resilience, courage in the face of adversity, and a trait I find sometimes overlooked, and that is skill. He was a very competent navigator. But there was also plenty of shadow. He was rigid. He was ruthless. He lacked diplomatic skills. And alas, you will forgive me for saying this, he was a man. He suffered from male overconfidence. In the end, there you go, there you go, there you go. Yeah, I can see the gentleman clapping. I find this very heartening, very good. Okay, so he, at the end, he got into a skirmish or even a battle that he was destined to lose, and he died in the Philippines. So, as you know, he himself did not return, but one of his ships did, aptly named the Victoria. So, there are, as I said, good and bad qualities in terms of leadership, and since we've already made a joke at the expense of men, I will now introduce our first speaker, and this being Vienna, allow me to give precedence to the lady. Will you please welcome Eva Asselmann. She is Professor of Differential and Personality Psychology at the Health and Medical University in Potsdam. Eva, please. This is your chance to speak, lady. 3 minutes.
Now.
Yeah, oh, yes.
So, yeah, I thought we should sit first, but great. Okay. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and to speak with you about leadership. When we speak about leadership, we often think about structures, people, strategies. But often, it's helpful to look at a single moment of human courage. I often think of Marie Curie working late at night in a dark shed in Paris around 1900. People told her it was hopeless to search for a force no one could see that perhaps even didn't exist. And yet she kept going. Not because she was safe, but because she believed that her work mattered. Years later, she uncovered the invisible force of radioactivity, and she changed how we understand the world. Her story tells us something essential. Real change starts within, with an idea and with the courage to stay with it, to stay engaged, even if everything feels uncertain. This kind of trust is more important, but also more difficult than ever, because technologies move faster than we can adapt, and systems shift before we can settle. Faced with all this change, our instinct is to seek control. We analyze more, we meet longer, and we move less. Because our brain shifts into a state of mild threat, more alert but less creative. We freeze instead of act. As a psychologist, I see this pattern nearly every day. Brilliant people freezing under pressure. Not because they lack skill, but because their brain mistakes uncertainty with threat. Evolution shaped this response in order to keep us safe and alive. But the problem is, in our modern world, uncertainty is the rule, not the exception. We won't stop the waves, but we can learn to ride them, because it's motion that keeps balance, like a surfer who stays upright by moving and not by holding still. Leadership today means moving, even if everything feels uncertain. So what defines leaders who navigate uncertainty? They share one conviction, that their actions matter, even if the path ahead is hard to see. Third, they don't focus on what's uncertain. They look at what they can influence and control. Because every step, every action brings clarity, it signals the brain, I can move the system. Second, they redefine success. In turbulence, long-term goals often become blurry. So it's much more useful to focus on progress, on the steady, continuous movement instead of perfection in the end. And third, they reframe uncertainty itself. They don't see it as threat, but as information that we need to adapt and that new opportunities become available. Peter Drucker called this self-management. Modern psychology would call it self-efficacy, the confidence to act under uncertainty. And the good news is, this attitude can be learned at any point of life. In my research, I've studied and found that personality develops across the entire lifespan. And I've also shown that self-efficacy can be trained intentionally. We never lose the capacity to grow. And there's another good news. Self-efficacy is contagious. When leaders show trust, not only in themselves, but also in their teams, then this belief spreads. When people know they can stand up, they can mistakes, they can try again, then something developed that we call psychological safety. When people feel safe and confident enough to contribute, then leadership becomes a shared capacity. Not a role held by a few, but a responsibility shared by the many. Because every culture starts with a state of mind, and every transformation starts with a deliberate decision to act. Thanks.
Very good, Eva. Thank you very much. Won't you please be seated? All right, first of all, I noticed I'm in an unfortunate seating position there at the back for enforcing the 3 minutes. So that is my first learning of this year's Drucker Forum. I'll do better next time. Up next, Michele Zanini. He is co-founder of the Management Lab. A warm welcome, please, to Michele.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Monica. And good morning, everyone. I hope you're excited as I am about the Drucker Forum this year. We have a fantastic program. I'm part of the team that is helping it, so I'm really, really excited to also be able to share the stage in this opening session. Let me start with a question for you. When your colleagues talk about the leadership team, do they mean A, everyone who can mobilize others and makes great things happen? Or B, the dozen or so EVPs that kind of sit atop the pyramid, right? And I guess for most of you, it's probably B, right? And I think that's a problem. You know, we live in an age of constant flux where the future is less and less an extrapolation of the past. And in this kind of environment to thrive, we need all the leadership capacity, all the change leadership that we can muster, right? And the problem with leadership development, how we identify and develop people in leadership positions, is that it's very much wedded to this idea of the managerial hierarchy, right? And I think this creates two big blind spots that we should reckon with. The first is that, you know, the leadership competencies that really matter to drive success in this age of upheaval, things like sensing new opportunities, energizing colleagues, challenging vested interests, nurturing others, building new business models, all those things don't get as much play, as much recognition in leadership programs, which are mostly about preparing people for a more expansive managerial role, right? And by the way, being an effective catalyst for change isn't something that is correlated with a hierarchy at all. I mean, think about Malala, you know, the girl who challenged the Taliban and became a global champion of girl education across the world, right? How many VPs reported to her, right? 0, right? And that brings me to the second kind of blind spot, which is that leadership development is overly elitist and very stratified. If you think about executive programs, they're about leading the organization. Further down, it's about leading the business, and even further down, leading the team. That makes sense, maybe in principle, but think about what that does, right? It basically assumes that most people, 80, 90% of the people in our organization, can't make sense of the big picture, and perhaps they don't even have to, right? And that assumption maybe made sense 100 years ago, but now people are incredibly skilled. They're much more capable than they used to be. They have access to AI and other tools that give them information, you know, the ability to sense and process a lot of information that used to be scarce and much more privileged. And if you think about the new generations that grew up on the social web, you know, their model of leadership is totally different. It's about generating followers, you know, not pleasing your boss, right? So with all those limits in mind, it's not a surprise to see that, you know, leadership development is not getting a good return on the investments, the billions of dollars that get spent every year, right? And organizations struggle to generate the leadership capacity they sorely need, right, to survive and even thrive in this age of upheaval. So I think basically the challenge for us is to rethink you know, what leadership development means, right? And practically speaking, to me, that means spending much more time and energy in identifying and nurturing catalysts and builders, and spending as much time on that as we do in preparing people to become better managers, right? And this will only happen with two things take place. The first is that we stop playing to the top of the organization, the top of the pyramid, and the second is when we start to challenge, I think, the outdated assumption that having a big title makes you a leader. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Michele. And for the final round of the introductory speakers, a warm welcome to Howard Yu. He is Professor of Management and Innovation at the International Institute for Management Development in Lausanne. Howard, welcome.
Hi, good morning. Great to be here. So my name is Howard Yu. I'm the Lego Professor of IMD in Switzerland, looking at management and innovation across line. I'm also the Research Director for Center for Future Readiness. So there is one question I'm always obsessed about. Why do some companies stay future ready, while others faded away? And so my research team decided to build a credit score for preparedness. We've been tracking 400 different companies across 7 different industries to build almost a credit score on how well they prepare for the future. And so we're looking at car companies, technology companies, you know, fashion, consumer packaged goods, global travel, pharmaceutical. Here's one thing that we found out, that across all different industries, There are companies move from good to great. Meanwhile, there are organizations fall from grace. You take technology, AMD, NVIDIA, TSMC, from good company, solid one, to magnificent. Meanwhile, you have Intel, once hero of Silicon Valley, fall to a sick person. So we want to understand why. It turns out it's not just technology. Every single organization, when company can really become good, they do one thing really well, and I call it principle one. They perform and transform at the same time. It's both and. They don't choose. It's that they are polishing their competence in order to make money now and stacking up new capability to make money in the future. Obviously, it's easier to be said than done, and it requires certain behavior at the organization level, which is principle 2, and we will discuss later, as well as organizational mechanism, so that you could actually scale up new capabilities. In the end, its organization can managing their quarterly earning with rigor, generate bottom line in order to fund aggressively into the innovation wins. Its organization can continue to strengthen their core competence, and meanwhile they are scaling up new capability, new business model that win. Its organization that strengthen their core offering, at the same time expanding their geographical region, as well as product line that wins. And the good news is, this principle can apply across all industry. So whether you're CEO in the room, team lead in the room, these principles should be able to help you to make business future ready. And if you are individual contributor, a new graduate from college, this principle should make your career future-proof. So very much looking forward for our roundtable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Howard. All right, ladies and gentlemen, after these 3 introductory statements, I will now introduce the 3 distinguished members of the panel to you, and we will get into the discussion proper. Please help me welcome from Miami, I almost said from Miami Vice, Johnny Taylor. He's President and CEO of the Society for Human Resource Management. Welcome to Vienna. What can I say? Freeze. No, I'm not going to say that. Please sit down. All right. Number 2, from Silicon Valley, just about, Enrique Rodriguez. He's head of go-to-market strategy for Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Palo Alto Networks. And this panel cannot do without a proper naval officer and a gentleman, of course. Please welcome Michael Carson, partner at McKinsey, co-founder of Abakin. Howard, please move. It's quite all right. It's quite all right. It's quite all right. So, this is the best part of the opening salvo. I get to kiss all the gentlemen, okay? Thank you very much, Drucker Forum. Yeah, all right. The ones I haven't kissed, we'll do afterwards, okay? All right, now, so we've heard the 3 introductory statements about leadership. Any thoughts from the panelists on what you just heard? Enrique, do you want to go first? Do you want to talk about trust, perhaps?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Monica. I think that I heard 2 things, one related to trust and also other related to resilience in your opening statement too. And one of the key leadership traits that, at least on my world, I see more and more related to trust is digital resilience, right? So the idea of digital resilience is that the obligation of a leader in their organization is to bring an environment which is safe, which is stable, which helps the key stakeholders of that organization to foster and have a good standing, right? This actually represents, and related to some of the statements, a fundamental shift. Before, trust was given for granted, digital resilience was given for granted, and now it's something that needs to be earned. And we hear more and more, in my case, in the world of cybersecurity, a board conversation that has shifted the question from are we secure in abstract to are we doing everything possible for our organizations to be safe, right? So it's relating this idea of trust and resilience to my world as a practitioner. So this is my first point.
Well, I mean, this is the city of Schnitzler, an Austrian author who said security is nowhere, it doesn't exist, yeah? So that may be the first concept that in a way may be an illusion. Johnny, anything you want to add to what you just heard?
Yeah, this conversation around trust, it's really interesting. We've, in our research at SHRM, constantly, trust doesn't mean I will agree with you. I think that's what we're beginning to see, this real tension when you speak to employees. The idea is, do I trust that you will be honest with me, or do I trust that you're going to do what I want you to do? And those are actually two different things. This idea of saying, in the spirit of transparency, this is the reality. But there's this real tension that exists between I'm going to trust you to tell me the truth, or I'm going to trust you to tell me what I want to hear. And we're seeing this play out in the workplace. So when we have these employee surveys, for example, we're often unable to determine what do the employees say when they say they don't trust senior management. We're trying to sort that.
I would like to get your take on that, Michael, especially will you do what I tell you to do on a Navy ship? Isn't that the order of the day? I mean, how are you going to survive if that doesn't work?
Well, it works in crisis because everyone is pulling together, and we have a short-term urgency that we need to resolve. But it doesn't work, even in the military, it doesn't work in outside of crisis or in peacetime. People think for themselves, and you want people to think for themselves, actually.
Okay, and any other thoughts you want to add to what you just heard?
Well, the creation of trust, excuse me, for a leader to generate trust, to create trust in their organization, takes a whole lot of skills. It's not a simple thing. So self-awareness is a big part of that. Decisiveness is a big part of that. Meaning-making is a big part of that. There's a whole lot of spokes, if you like, to the hub that is trust.
All right. So if you're a psychologist, so let me ask you, I've heard all these fantastic statements. They all sound great in theory. We've all worked in organizations long enough to know that it does not always work that way. How do you translate all of this in reality? I'm wondering. What about clarity? What about self-management? What about fear, uncertainty? Some of the keywords that you mentioned in your material.
Yeah, you mentioned it too. Trust is something that we can't communicate in words only, but we need to show it. We need to live it day by day in organizations. And under uncertainty, self-leadership is more important than ever. We can't control everything that's happening in the outside, but we can regulate how we respond to all of that. And that means we need to understand our emotions, how we think, feel, and behave. We need to pause before we act. Most managers react to uncertainty by doing more, but this creates even more stress, and then we get in a cycle where stress leads to overreactions and so on. But what we sometimes need is to do less, to pause in order to downregulate our autonomous nervous system, because under stress, the limbic region, they react more. We respond with fear and anxiety, and at the same time, our prefrontal brain regions are suppressed. That means we can't think clearly. So when we pause, when we self-regulate our emotions, when we calm down, we can think more clearly and we can take better decisions.
You make it sound very easy, and I must say, guilty as charged. I tend to do too much, but I'm trying to learn, okay. But of course, that is a very valid point. Now, Howard, why don't we talk about AI? It was mentioned in this introductory statement. It is, of course, a major buzzword and a major topic in the financial markets. I hope everybody is loaded up on NVIDIA and Palantir. And so what is the story there? How do future-ready companies embrace AI?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to do with human trust at the same time. Because I've seen there are organizations are so obsessed about automation, and the end goal is just the bottom line. And then, of course, we get resistance from employees, because if my job is to automate everything and make myself redundant, it's like, good luck. But then I have also seen organizations that really have described, here is what we want to do, is not just augmenting your tasks, but using technologies to help you to do your job better, and having a roadmap, what is your future job look like, with also training along the way. And look, trust cannot be declared. I cannot walk into the room and say, we are safe here, there's trust in here, no one is going to believe in it. What employee needs is to exactly see the initiative, training, everyday sliding door moment that the leader demonstrate. We are not just automate yourself and make yourself redundant, but we're going to give you space to augment your daily job so that your joy of the 9 to 5 would actually get more. And we are actually seeing a divergence across industry. So we have to invest alongside with that human capital at the same time.
Question.
So that would be my take on it.
But what if that's not true? What if, in fact, your job is going to go away? And that's the struggle that we're hearing with employees is we're saying, yes, you're going to be freed up to do higher level strategic work, when in fact there are some jobs that will be displaced. And that's where we're beginning to have a trust problem with our employee population, because the fact of the matter is trillions of dollars are being invested in something that is, its goal is to reduce our dependency on human beings. So some jobs are literally going to go away. How do we, at the same time, in the context of trust, be honest with employees?
So I'll just give quick response, and I'm sure others would have ideas. Task is fixed, so they would get eliminated. But career or mission should stay constant. So we should need to think about a mission and a job and career rather than task activities.
Enrique.
At least, coming to the Peter Drucker idea around the knowledge workers, right? Just one quick data point. In my company, we process 1.5 trillion data points a day.
At Palo Alto Networks. Yeah, cybersecurity company, yeah.
More than 150 countries. And we are 16,000 employees, right? So we have quite a few data points to analyze, let's say. So based on this idea of the knowledge worker, how we see it, and I understand there are some criticism around that, but this really frees up the workers to focus on what only they can do, which is bring judgment. A last point, one of our products has reduced the time to detect a threat from weeks to minutes, right? Traditionally, and I'm not going to get in technicalities, but the amount of work that the people in a security operations center, those places with all the screens in the big corporations that were showing where the threats were, now these people, they don't have to devote 3 or 4 weeks to find the issue. They are freed up now actually to resolve the issue, right? So again, it's a practical example of what AI is doing for us. First, to make manageable what is not manageable, and second, to bring it forward.
Well, the problem is, surprisingly to me at least, who is certainly not a digital native, as you can tell, is the fact that no other field virtually has lost as many jobs to AI as software engineering. AI can code, yeah? So there you go.
Incorporation.
And I hope Palo Alto is paying you a decent salary and may you live and prosper, yeah? But yeah.
I work in strategy, right? So
Right, great, yeah.
But absolutely, the idea is to augment our workers. So.
Yeah, you wanted to say something, Johnny?
No, it's just, I mean, you made the point that I think we honestly, as leaders, are going to have to deal with this issue of human displacement. I think we have to acknowledge that some percentage of the workforce, we have data that suggests in the US that roughly 15% of the US workforce is at high risk, medium to high risk of true displacement. Now, that doesn't mean there's not something on the other side of it, but we have to be very mindful of the fact that our employees are not stupid. They know that some of these jobs, as they currently exist, are going to go away, and then what?
Yeah, right. Michele, do you want to add something to that? For instance, why is genuine leadership so rare in most large organizations?
Right.
Present company always excluded.
Yeah. Well, let me maybe just build on what was discussed about AI, because I think there is a third scenario. Not that jobs get displaced, not that jobs get enriched, but jobs become worse, because basically AI becomes a control tool and reinforces the worst tendencies we have as managers and leaders. And Adrian Woolridge, who's going to speak later today or tomorrow, has written a wonderful column about it in Bloomberg last week. And, you know, I'm old enough to remember all the hype when the web and Web 2.0 came about and how it was going to empower people and create these lateral organizations that were going to, you know, flatten the hierarchy. None of that has happened, which doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. I'm actually a big optimist about the potential of AI to free up a lot of human ingenuity, but it's a choice that we have to make, and it stems from whether we treat people as commodities that, you know, whose cost needs to be minimized, or as reservoirs of untapped potential. And so it almost like it stems from that kind of calculus and decision and value system that we have, right? And I think the future's undetermined, and I'm optimistic, but we need to be careful because, you know, this could end up in like even more of a dystopia than we have today.
I am very tempted to ask a almost sacrilegious question, because most leaders, let's face it, are men. Men are cowards. How do we get men to tell their employees the truth? Eva, give me a brief reply.
Yeah, I'd say it's not so much about talking, but about showing, not control people, but to enable them to cope with change. And what we need is learning agility. If my job is replaced, I need to learn, relearn, unlearn very quickly in order to respond to what's changing. I won't be able to prepare for everything. But what I can learn from early on is how to adapt flexibly. And that's what we can do as leaders to enable people to learn, to develop, to grow, and to face uncertainty with flexibility.
Mike, tell me about leadership in the new era. And so what do you believe leadership must become in the new era that is going to be dominated by AI?
For me, leadership always has been and will remain a human thing. In fact, this is the great leadership challenge of our age. In a way, it's... I'm going to say something sacrilegious.
Yeah, well, but please do, so I'm not the only one. I feel better.
In a way, sorry. In a way, it is nothing we haven't seen before. Now, I know that sounds strange because we're all thinking AI, wow, it's changing the world, and it is. But it's just doing it faster. We've had big changes before, for industrialization, information age, but this one is faster. A friend of mine quoted his mentor the other day as saying, things are getting better and better, and worse and worse, faster and faster.
All right.
In the world. So it's a human thing, and how we lead through this. Future leaders are going to need to lead through other leaders. Future leaders are going to need to connect at a deeper level of empathy with their people. Future leaders are going to need to be rationally optimistic and lead through deep uncertainty, but always with the faith that things are going to work out.
All right, okay. Changing tack for a moment, we don't, at least as far as I can tell, don't really have a member of the Generation Z here on stage. But what, Johnny, perhaps, can we do in order to bring them on board? And what can we, the Miami Vice generation, learn from the youngsters? Aside from their technical skills, of course, that I am personally in awe of, but what about the personality traits, perhaps?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm offended because I'm a member of the Generation Z.
You know, that I'm very sorry.
I identify with them,
I'm
and
very
therefore
sorry.
I am. And no, seriously, so first of all, what do they want from us? And you used the word that I think is key, empathy. We literally, the demand for empathetic leadership, particularly for the younger generations, is something, and I use the word demand intentionally because it's not a nice to have anymore. There is an expectation that we as leaders will be more empathetic, and that's not to be confused or conflated with sympathy. It's literally empathetic leadership. So that's something that we're seeing that I think will become absolutely like a requirement if in managing this generation. The second part of your question, what can we learn from them? They are digital natives, and they also they accept and tolerate and embrace change at much faster rates than we did. And it's really interesting when you're working with them. They've seen, you know, we went to school and you study what you study and you expect to be prepared to do something for 30 years. And their expectation, their relationship with work is very, very different. What they're doing today, they have accepted they likely won't be doing 5 years from now, perhaps 3 years from now. So what I'm getting from them is their ability to accept and embrace change, rapid change, to your point, is something that would do us all well in this rapidly changing environment.
And what about the often voiced reproach that they don't really have a proper work ethic? They're only interested in work-life balance. They don't want to work 5 days a week. They insist on working from home. They don't want to come into the office. I mean, Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan is trying to bring everybody back in. I sort of agree with him to a certain extent, I don't know. But anyway, so is that totally unjustified? Is that just us, the dinosaurs, being envious of the younger generation?
I have a certain sympathy with the bringing people back to work because I notice that when people are physically present with one another, there's a much deeper connection. And video is great for maintaining a relationship when there's distance, but it's not very good for starting them. So actually I have a sympathy with that, and I'm finding that a lot of people are coming back, certainly in London, more and more back to the place of work for the community. But I think it's just too broad brush to say Gen Z are lazy or Gen Z are, you know, it's just, I wouldn't say that at all. I think the next generation has got the fastest change to cope with that we've ever seen in the human race. So I cut them a bit of slack.
Monica, can I build on that?
Yeah, please, please.
So in defense, I have 2 Gen Z daughters, and so I want to maybe take their perspective and refer to, you know, some survey data. It was pretty shocking, showing that the vast majority of Gen Z employees don't aspire to become managers and move up the ranks. To them, the prospect of managing in this kind of traditional frame is deeply unappealing, and I think it has a lot to do with what I kind of hinted at earlier in my opening statements, is that for them, the model leadership growing up on the social web isn't how many people report to you, but rather how many people want to follow you. They want to opt to follow you because you generate value for them. You're doing things that make their lives better. And so unless we change that frame, and we, you know, in the way we think about leadership and the role of managers, they're not going to engage. And it's easy for us to say, wow, they're lazy or unmotivated, but it's kind of on us to create the work environment that really deeply resonates with sort of their mindset and how they've grown up and what is the reality of work and life for them, right? And so it's really something we need to work on and create that kind of environment that resonates. So.
Great. And you mentioned almost mentioned my favorite buzzword as an analyst, which is sustainability. And I'm going to be very frank, I'm to a certain extent skeptical of the term. So they want to work in a company with a purpose, etc. But the reality then doesn't match that. It leads to disappointment. How do we deal with that? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think for us as leader, the starting point is really like empathy was being mentioned. A lot of the time I've seen senior manager is almost like lecturing the Gen Z. It's like, oh, you have no attention. But they grew up from a world that if something is not interesting, they swipe away. Yeah. And so we ask them to come back to work 9 to 5 and we stuff them with boring meetings, face to face. They were like, why am I here? So this is our responsibility to really understand when we need face-to-face meeting is creative problem solving. It's not about business review. Send information. Information should be transparent, moving from need-to-know basis to right-to-know. And so I think as leader of, I'm Gen X, I lead a small team of analysts, Gen Z, I need to adapt my way of working, fast feedback loop. They don't wait for half a year and have a 1 hour feedback meeting. They want every day, leave me a voicemail for 5 seconds and I will pivot. So it's my responsibility to speed up my clock speed and then we're talking and then we can dream bigger together.
They want a voicemail of 5 seconds every day.
Don't talk for more than 1 minute.
How can you say hello and get cracking, my friend? That's 5 seconds. That's what I would say. I mean, what are you going to say in 5 seconds? I'm serious.
Well, so what happened, right? They would leave me like 10 seconds voicemail. I go back and say, okay, go ahead. So it's this rapid feedback.
They leave the voicemail, not you.
They leave me and I leave back, and everything on WhatsApp. Because if I write them an email, they would write back using ChatGPT. That's the problem. Like, I need to adapt the way they work.
But then if it's 10 seconds, it boils down to giving a command. What else it can be phrased as a suggestion, but let's be realistic, it ain't one.
Howard, has the telephone gone out of fashion? Because this is one thing I will say generally about Gen Z. They don't phone each other. So, if there's a courageous conversation to be had, that should be had face to face. But if there are lots of conversations that are sub-courageous, they're just important. But to try and do that on text message, you lose all the nuance. You're losing 80% of the content.
And to that point, I was going to just comment on that. It's really interesting, too. We're trying to strike that balance between speaking to them the way they want to be spoken to, but also, I think about as a parent, my responsibility isn't always to tell my daughter what she wants to hear, how she wants to hear it. I have to also, my job is to raise her. And if we're trying to develop future leaders, it's not going to be in 5-second bites. Every meeting is not going to be interesting and motivating. You're going to have hour, 2, 3, my team's here, 8-hour meetings that will bore you to death, but that's a part of it. That's why it's called work. I think we have to be really careful.
Thank you for saying that.
That's what it's called,
Thank you for saying that, my southern friend.
This notion that it's always got to be entertaining, it's always got to be you. We have this real issue that, and Dr. Alonso here is our chief knowledge officer, he used this term, we talk about empathy. In fact, what most people want is me-pathy. They want empathy toward themselves. They should give 2 shits about you or anybody else.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say curse words. I'm sorry, boss. But the idea, we do have to be very cognizant of the fact that our job is not to just give them what they want. Some of it is you got to give them what they need to develop into
a little bit of tough love. Yeah, okay.
And the other thing I would just say to reinforce that is that this is partly what leadership's about. What you describe as a paternalistic approach. Yes. Actually, if you're bored, do something about it.
That's right.
Right? Take some leadership. Do something about it.
Tell me, how is it really in Silicon Valley?
So I will say I wanted to bring a bit the practitioner view here. I think that there is all our professors here know better, but there is a very important element, which is the culture of the company. right? So I've worked in 3 different companies. Each of them have 3 different cultures. And even if we are generalizing with a new generation, what I try to do when I recruit someone is someone that I can know that they are going to deliver what I need, right? Because in the end, in real life, what I need is outcomes, and the organizations are not patient. So when I'm hiring for my team or my reports are hiring, we make sure that, of course we make mistakes, but the idea is to try the people and bring people on board which are aligned with our priorities, right? So it's something which helps on the practitioner side. It's a luxury sometimes, but hiring the right people which are culturally aligned is very important. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah, well, that may be outdated, but I remember the saying, strategy eats culture for strategy eats culture for breakfast, right? But anyway.
Culture eats strategy.
Is it the other way around?
It is the other way around.
Yeah, okay, all right. Anyway, so culture is dominant. Yeah, right, exactly. Tell me about working from home. How is that done at Palo Alto Networks? Do you have to come into the office every day? No.
The policy is, just one example.
If you can say that, yes. Maybe you can't.
Yes. So our policy is, in general, of course there are exceptions and we understand people's life, but we need to go to the office around 3 days a week, 70% of the weeks. So the idea of this is that we have a good balance between, the necessities of real life and your personal life, but also, as they mentioned, working together. In many times we are working under pressure and we need, quick outcomes, and being together helps a lot. But at the same time, we are trying to find the balance between the 5 days a week. This has been changing, of course, but it's what's going on in my company right now.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, we had a conversation about this at dinner last night. It's amazing how, and I got your point from a practitioner standpoint. What did we do before 2019? The necessities of life. You had 2 days, the weekend, to figure out your life. Right? We may have overcorrected a little, or maybe not. Who knows what the answer is? But there is a concern that we have made all of this the employer's concern. The reason you come here is to return value, and if we're
you come to the office, you mean?
To the office,
yeah.
Right? And value is just not your individual contributions, it's the contribution of the collective. And while you can work remotely, and we've proven that during the pandemic for office workers, desk workers, is it optimal? So the question is not, can you do it? It is, as we begin to measure this, is it suboptimal for long periods of time? I know you hate this word, sustainable, but that's the question. And I think it's early. We're just recently in a true pre-pandemic world, and we're going to figure this out. It was a grand experiment to send everyone home and say, continue to be productive. More to come. But I do think we have to constantly balance, how much of this, when someone says to me, I need Monday and Friday remotely to take care of my personal life, I'm like, really? Really, what about my business? And we have to be willing to say that to employees, that I pay you so that I get something out of you, you get job security, but we're not having that conversation. We may be, just maybe, we've overcorrected and we're focused so much on what the employee wants and needs and not enough on what the people who invest in us want and need.
And I'm wondering, a newer generation is no longer interested in making a career. If they stay home too much, then they won't advance on the corporate ladder, or is that no longer a desirable goal?
Can I jump?
Yeah.
Oh. I was just saying, younger people, they want meaning and this long-term fulfillment. And I think when we make them experience that, sometimes it takes, I need to align with certain rules in order to achieve long-term goals and have this fulfilling feeling of meaning, then they understand better why sometimes, it's necessary to stay to the rules and to do things for the collective.
Michele.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think this generational discussion is a little bit, it can lead us to an unproductive avenue because, I suppose you could say they're a little bit entitled. They need to grind through work, 8-hour meetings. But I think they're kind of sending us a signal, like, why are some of these meeting 8 hours? Are they actually productive? And maybe that's a feeling that is shared across generations. It's just that they're the only ones, they've never seen this BS before, and so they're like, what is this? Everyone else is kind of inured. And if you look at the statistics around, on Gallup engagement and how people feel they're treated at work, whether their opinions count, whether they have the development support to have a career, they're all trending negatively across generations, and they're getting worse since 2020 when work from home and all these goodies, were thrown in, right? So it seems to me that the problem isn't so much work from home or do you have flexibility, but rather is the work that people are doing, is it productive? Is it fulfilling? Is it free of all these constraints that make no sense? And I think part of it is maybe, we need to be a little bit more empathetic or sensitive, but part of it is how we design the system that these people operate in, and is it amplifying their initiative, their passion, their ingenuity, or not? And the evidence suggests that most of it isn't. So I think we need to kind of think very systematically about what it is that in the workplace that doesn't work, and work from home is just maybe one very small part of the puzzle.
What about bureaucracy? That is often mentioned as a major obstacle. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, oftentimes we hear about senior management team want people to embrace, say, AI and innovation. And I often ask the leader is, okay, that's great, but could your Gen Z employee use your own internal data combined with customer data and market trend, run an experiment with the Gen Z who knows how to do it, and present back to you in 2 weeks? And if it requires 5 approval forms, 7 different emails, then we as leader, we have a cultural issue to fix. So I very much agree with you just mentioned. It really is for us to rethink about, in order for the Gen Z to really embrace our vision and work further. I've seen so many hardworking people out there, the young people. But what they cannot tolerate anymore is exactly the corporate approval and the bureaucracy, things that they don't see adding value. But if they could see that daily work, hourly work can have an impact, boy, they would work overnight. They don't care. Because they, as long as they have that sense of autonomy, is good. But here is what we could do using technologies to simplify it. And it's only people with positional power can really simplify a complex organization to unleash that human potential.
Yes.
The only thing, some bureaucracy is good. I mean, one of the issues that we can never, there are reasons why there are redundancies built into systems and approvals are necessary. If you left people up to 11, there were early research on this, let people do what they want to do. And without approvals, you could have 10,000 people doing things that become uncontrollable and unmanageable as well. So I think I'm always careful when we just broadly say bureaucracy is bad, some bureaucracy is necessary for the good of the enterprise. And so when I meet young people they've not been around 30, 40 years, right? They've not seen some of these things where, think about what's happening in air traffic control right now in the United States. Some bureaucracy and redundancies and checks and approvals are necessary for the safety of, right? We just, even in your world, I mean, right? There are some approvals that are necessary, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we see, at least in my company and in the past, at least you need a minimum of bureaucracy, as you said. But I think the key is to make sure that the outcome, what we expect from this work, it's clear. So everyone is aligned on that. So with a minimal set of rules and a clear outcome, and everyone is aligned on that outcome, is where I've seen that the projects are successful.
Monica, can I just...
Yeah, please, by all means.
I think, there are 2 things. So control is good. I think the question is, how do you get control? You can get it with top-down rules and processes. You can get it in other ways. You can get it with a deep sense of purpose and a shared mission that it acts as a North Star for everyone. You can get it through transparency. You can get it with fast feedback cycles. So if you're doing something wrong, it gets corrected. You can get it with peer feedback. Hey, you're doing something wrong. Someone who's actually close to you can tell you, you probably shouldn't be doing that. So, there are ways to change the how of control away from this industrial era process and structure. So that'd be one. The second thing, and a lot of the companies that are bureaucracy-free or operate with minimal bureaucracy have been very clever in doing those kinds of things. The second is that in most organizations, there's no check on over-indexing on bureaucracy. And so you need to create a mechanism that says, is this requirement, is this process good or not? And right now, there's very little of that. So the ratchet only goes one way, and most companies end up incredibly stagnant and ossified and disempowering places to work because no one's really accountable for that.
Can I add one observation? So in my readiness indicator, we track finance. And of course, finance got a lot of regulation and things like that. But then not just some company are able to simplify it, but one of my friends who's Gen X, starting to work with a fintech in insurance industry. And I asked, how do you pass information? They don't send PDF. I was like, so how do you share information? Well, it's Google Doc. Why do you use Google Doc? Because one single document is all share one version of truth. So to me, it's not so much about losing control, but it's using the latest technology so that you don't need human over-communicate and error in redundancy. And if we don't do that, we are just out of sync of the world, because it's not just me as a company, a state-owned enterprise with monopoly. We are fighting for good people who want to make an impact to the world.
And how do you train the older employees to use the most current technology? How do you get all of them on board? You're going to have human resistance, I'm telling you.
That's right. And I think top management teams set the tone. What type of company we want to become? Do we want to stay on the cutting edge and up to date and embrace change? Or we see ourselves as state-owned enterprise, a government agency, we could just fall behind. It's a managerial choice at the very top.
From a psychology standpoint, is that the right way to do it, you think?
Yeah, I mean, older people need more training. For them, it's actually harder also to use newer technologies. It's not only the resistance, it's also harder for them to work with it because they often don't have this intuition that younger people have. So we need to train them and also make them experience that it has some personal benefit also for them. If they use the technology, that things that it's not threatening, but it's easier for me to work with it. Make them experience it.
We're just about in the final round. One catchword that I saw that I would like to address and we haven't really addressed, which I find intriguing, is leadership as a service. Any thought on that?
There's something about all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I love the phrase because of being in the Navy, and it's about getting stuck in and about all going in the same direction with a shared sense of purpose, and that sense of purpose is something that a leader imparts, uniting people behind a goal that is more than themselves.
But do you think that most leaders see themselves as servants? I kind of doubt it.
I meet good leaders who do, and I meet leaders who don't. I don't know the numbers. I'm an optimist. So.
How would you define a good leader?
I would define a good leader as someone who operates is prepared to go outside of their comfort zone, is prepared to learn, is prepared to open themselves to possibility, to listen to the system and to the people around them, and then to take leadership in navigating the days to come.
When I was living in the US, I took a class with a professor called Barbara Kellerman, and she has a very interesting system she called the leadership systems, and she talks about leadership, followership, and context, right? And I think what I really like about that course is the idea that I don't really know what is a good leader, but I know what is an effective leader, which is different. And in this case, effective can mean that probably, are you a leader if you don't have followers, right? And understanding that in different contexts, we have horror stories in human history about very effective leaders, right? But the idea is, understanding these three elements together, leadership, followership, and context.
And the only thing that I'd say to add to it is leadership is by definition situational. A little bit of that point. So to your point, in crisis, there's a type of way to lead. In certain contexts, if you're running a nuclear power plant, this is not a time for us to convene and discuss how we're going to do this. There are rules, there's very regimented because there are significant consequences if things aren't followed. So I just think as we do this, I don't know what's a perfect leader because it's situational. And even within the context of any of our companies on any given day, there are times when I'm going to be a little bit more authoritative and a little bit more dictatorial depending upon the circumstances of the day. And so we have to be really careful talking about the perfect leader, I think, because it does depend. Yeah. We have some underpinnings, some of what we've discussed here, but ultimately it depends.
Can I ask you, Johnny, a question? Because I totally agree with you. Leadership is situational. Mary Parker Follett wrote about it 100 years ago, saying the law of the situation, depending on the context, there are different people who have more authority, right? But out of the members of SHREM, how many would agree with that? Like, they may say that, but isn't like for 95% of the people, leadership is positional?
That's right.
Exactly.
That's the challenge. In practice, you're absolutely right, particularly as you look at an older leader. There's no question there. But right, but as I guess part of my comment is that's what I said, it's a compliment, it's not to disagree. It's situational, and that's a refinement of the conversation. Your fundamental question was, what's good leadership? And I think it is by definition situational.
Yes, okay. Did you want to add something to that? Because you said positional.
So like, how do we bridge that gap? Right, because most leadership development is predicated on the managerial ladder. So, so that was my open question.
Eva, please.
Of course, it's positional and situational, but nonetheless, you need long-term goals, and you want the company or organization to be successful, so you need to empower people. Empower them, like deliver skills, enable them to lead themselves. Most systems are moving from hierarchical ones to complex ones, where everyone is kind of a leader, like at the bottom or at the top. So we need to teach skills, how to work, how to approach problems, how to deal with uncertainty. And I think what we always can do in every situation is to be a role model, to teach people how to approach problems. And that's also something that lasts. We are facing uncertainty. We don't know whether the company will reach certain goals, but what is a lasting thing about leadership is to impact people, to influence their development, to empower them to be successful in the future.
Howard, your thoughts on that?
No, just this discussion reminded me the quote, Andy Grove, the legendary CEO, long passed away at Intel. He said, every time when a company gets it right, it's the marriage between positional power and knowledge power together. And today we talk a lot about Gen Z. Of course, they know stuff that senior leader may lack. But when company get it right, it's the perfect marriage between positional power and knowledge power. So this is really hands-on, all hands on deck, because we need to zoom in to a situation and zoom out and thinking big. And I don't think unless we have diversity in school of thoughts, we would never get there. Whether it's life science, healthcare, pharmaceutical, finance, we don't know how 2030 the world would look like. So we need people on the ground to bring that piece of information, all hands on deck, to zoom in and zoom out. So I think it's situational, but it's across leaders rather than one leader.
Mm-hmm. I'm very grateful to you for mentioning the subject of diversity in the financial services industry 5 minutes before the end. Otherwise, I would have talked about it. Because I think that we have a long way to go, my friend, in that field. Yeah, we have a long way to go. All right, so we're going to do a final round. I've heard a lot of interesting thoughts, and certainly I hope you have as well. Perhaps reflecting on what we talked about, what is, and I would like to begin with you, Johnny, what is the most prominent thought on leadership that you would like to share or that you take away from this panel?
I heard the word followership, and I think that's really an important word as we think about leadership in the context. Ultimately, people can follow you if they're, if you force them to. But ideally, and this is the concept of servant leadership, is that people want to work with you. They want you to lead them. That to me is
true. That is
the
very
goal,
true.
when someone says, I want to work with that person, and if that person left, I'd actually go with them, or I'd try as hard. That's when you know you've done something right, is when people voluntarily want to follow you.
When I first came into a position of leadership, it was one of the first major revelations. Can I say that many, not all, but many people want to be told what to do? Yeah, go ahead, Michael. What is the most salient thought that you take with you from this panel?
It's a word we haven't really mentioned, but I'm going to go with it anyway, courage. The courage of leadership courage comes from cœur, the French word, so it's leadership of the heart. And that is what I think more than anything is going to be needed in the coming days, leadership from the heart. The three great virtues of a leader are faith, hope, and love. Faith that there's something greater at work, hope that you give to the organization and to the people, which is their fuel, and love, which is the service you were talking about. So those three with the red thread of courage.
From the Bible, yes, very good. Enrique.
Yes, coming back to the beginning, I think the idea of trust is very important. In my case, as I mentioned, the idea of digital resiliency, because, and I think coming to the quote of this session, like the leadership that tomorrow demands, if leaders are unable to create a resilient environment, everything is changing, so they need to make their reality stable to be able to bring outcomes. And that's related to trust.
Howard, what is the most important thought that you're taking with you or that you want to share?
We just need to assume and have the deep belief that everybody, everywhere, can have the deep capacity to learn. Any resistance is out of this assumption he or she cannot learn enough, or I don't have the ability to learn fast enough, and that generates fear. And again, in the gaming industry, you have 60-year-old guy who is building gaming platform for youngster. Who said Gen Z or Boomer cannot be technologically very good? We can. So as Gen Z can learn how the world works as well. So that deep belief we can all learn is really important.
Okay.
For me, I love the discussion about leadership being very dynamic and situation specific, and as well as natural. That is, it feeds on people's willingness to follow others. And I'll give you a quick anecdote. W.L. Gore is a very interesting company, 10,000 people, makers of Gore-Tex and thousands of other products. Some people, they have basically no titles at Gore. But on the business cards, it either says associate or it says team leader. And when I'd ask the person, how do you get a team leader title? And he goes, well, if you call a meeting and people show up, then you're a leader. And so, how do we embed this kind of thinking and practice in how we lead, manage, and organize? That's our challenge.
The final word goes to the lady.
You talked about resilience. I'd add self-regulation to deal with our own emotions in order to approach problems more openly, because our brain is driven by emotions. Cognitions come second. And if we can do that, we can also approach problems more openly. We can be more flexible in order to find solutions for the future.
Very good. I'm right on time, ladies and gentlemen. It's been an outstanding pleasure to be with you. I'm going to leave you with a final thought on Magellan. Never forget, the man is not famous for what he said or even what he wrote, but for what he did. For my guests, ladies and gentlemen.